Hello guys and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to tell you shortly about Spain history. The Iberian Peninsula was already inhabited by humans from the 3rd millennium BC. However, it wasn't until much later that the region was united under one state, which happened with the emergence of the Kingdom of Spain in the 9th century. But before that, there was a long period of external domination. In the 6th century BC, the Phoenicians arrived, followed by the Greeks and the Carthaginians. Over the following decades, the Spaniards conquered and colonized vast territories in South and Central America. France, England, and the Dutch waged wars against the country, which resulted in the loss of many Spanish colonies. Spain itself fell into a deep crisis. The population decreased drastically due to plague epidemics and famine. Economically, the country was completely exhausted. At the same time, the nation experienced a cultural flourishing known as the Spanish Golden Age. She absolutized the country and did not allow any form of political participation. Many citizens emigrated, mainly to Cuba. Puerto Rico and the USA, there was great social tension between the old ruling class and the emerging middle class. Furthermore, the country was still suffering from the consequences of the economic crisis, which led to widespread poverty. Against this background, the Spanish Civil War broke out in 1936. Which was to a large extent a conflict between the supporters of the old regime and the Republicans who wanted to introduce democratic institutions. As a result of the global financial crisis, Spain has been hit hard. It is also a country with a high standard of living, a strong economy, and a well-developed infrastructure. The average annual temperature varies greatly depending on the region. On the coast, the average temperature is around 18 degrees Celsius, while inland it can be up to 25 degrees Celsius. Spain is home to a wide variety of plant and animal species. In the coastal regions, there are mainly Mediterranean plants such as olive trees, grapevines, and citrus fruits. Inland, the vegetation becomes more sparse and mountainous. In the mountains, there are mainly conifers and deciduous trees. The fauna includes wild boars, deer, eagles, and foxes. Spain has a lot to offer its citizens and residents. The country is located in the southwest of Europe and is surrounded by France, Portugal, and Andorra. In addition, Spain has extensive coastlines on the Mediterranean Sea and the Atlantic Ocean. The terrain is dominated by the Pyrenees Mountains in the north and the Ebro River Valley in the northeast. In the center of the country are the Central Systems, a mountain range that stretches across the Iberian Peninsula. The highest peak is the Mohawk, which rises to 3,479 meters above sea level. The GDP dropped sharply, and the unemployment rate rose significantly. The austerity measures taken by the government in response have led to massive protests. These demonstrations have been going on for several months and are among the largest in the country's history. The Republicans received support from international volunteers and the Soviet Union, while the nationalists were supported by Nazi Germany and Fascist Italy. Ultimately, however, it was General Francisco Franco who emerged victorious from the Civil War. He established a dictatorship that lasted for almost 4 decades. In Barcelona, you can visit the famous Sagrada Familia, or stroll along Las Ramblas. Madrid is home to the Royal Palace and the Prado Museum. And in Seville, you can admire the magnificent architecture of the cathedral, and that Spain is a beautiful country with a rich history and culture. The country has a lot to offer tourists and residents alike. In addition, Spain had to fight several wars, such as the Spanish-American War in 1898, in which it lost the last remnants of its colonial empire. Liberal and progressive forces rose up against her regime, and ultimately the Queen was forced to flee to exile in 1866. A new constitution was introduced, and Spain became a constitutional monarchy. After the war, the Bourbon dynasty came to power in Spain, which had previously ruled over France. A new constitution was adopted in 1978, which established Spain as a constitutional monarchy with a parliamentary system. And when the Socialist Workers' Party came to power in 1996, Spain's transition to democracy was largely completed. Since then, the country has seen many changes. Spain joined the Eurozone in 1999 and adopted the euro as its official currency. In recent years, however, the country has been plagued by an economic crisis and severe unemployment. In the following years, Spain joined NATO and the European Economic Community. Today's EU, the country experienced an economic boom that has continued to this day. Now, the rulers of Spain and France were the same dynasty. This meant that France had a strong ally in the West, which was not to the liking of the other great powers. To prevent Spain from becoming too powerful again, they forced it to give up some of its overseas territories. The country's enormous wealth was reflected in magnificent works of art and literature. A fierce war of liberation then broke out in which the Spanish people showed incredible tenacity, but ultimately it was not enough to beat back the French. When the troops of the victorious coalition arrived, they occupied the country. In the following peace treaty, Spain lost Gibraltar to the British and had to cede territories on the Mediterranean islands. The Spanish colonial empire was severely weakened. Mexico, Venezuela, and many Central American states declared their independence. Great artists such as Diego Velázquez and Francisco de Goya, as well as writers like Miguel de Cervantes, created masterpieces during this era. These three Mediterranean civilizations were the first to establish themselves on the peninsula. Then came the Romans, who defeated the Carthaginians in a war lasting over 3 centuries. They annexed the region and made it part of their empire. The province of Hispania Tarraconensis became very prosperous during the Roman rule. And even after the Western Roman Empire fell apart, it remained intact for a while longer under the Visigoths, a Germanic people who had previously pillaged and now ruled large parts of southwestern Europe. The following centuries saw the Iberian Peninsula under the control of various Muslim dynasties. The Umayyad Caliphate conquered most of the territory from the 7th century onwards and established the Emirate of Cordoba, which soon became an independent caliphate. This union laid the foundation for the unification of the Spanish kingdoms. After this model, the Spanish Habsburgs then conquered Naples in southern Italy, Milan in northern Italy, and even ruled the Holy Roman Empire for almost a century. At the same time, however, internal conflicts between the different Spanish kingdoms flared up again and again. It wasn't until 1469 that Ferdinand and Isabella, King and Queen of Aragon and Castile, respectively, succeeded in overcoming this resistance and definitively uniting the two kingdoms. Under them, Spain became a centralized absolute monarchy. The Jews and Muslims were expelled or converted, and the Spanish Inquisition was founded. In the north, however, some Christian kingdoms managed to resist the advance of Islam. By the 10th century, it formed a loose confederation known as the Kingdom of Asturias, Leon, and Castile. From here, the Christians started their reconquest of the peninsula. In the south, the Portuguese and Spanish kingdoms emerged, while in the east, the Mediterranean coast remained in Muslim hands until the end of the 14th century. Only in the west, the Christian kings fought for centuries against the Moors. Finally, in 1248, Ferdinand III conquered the city of Seville, thus reuniting the entire territory of modern-day Spain under Christian rule. In the late Middle Ages, the two kingdoms of Aragon and Castile entered into a dynastic union through the marriage of their monarchs. Columbus's discovery of America in 1492 is also closely linked to the name of Spain. During the 17th century, however, Spain's power began to decline. By the mid-18th century, Spain had recovered somewhat and was able to take part in the 7 Years' War on the side of Great Britain. In 1808, Napoleon invaded Spain and deposed the king. In the second half of the 19th century, Spain was ruled by Queen Isabella II. In the following years, however, there were numerous coups and counter-coups, as well as military uprisings. This instability was compounded by serious economic problems. At the beginning of the 20th century, Spain was in a deep crisis. In 1975, Franco died, and his successor, Juan Carlos I, initiated a process of democratization. In 1992, the 500th anniversary of Columbus's discovery of America was celebrated with a World Fair in Seville. In 2010, protests erupted in Spain, known as the Indignados movement, which has since declined somewhat but continues to shape political life in the country. However, Spain is not only characterized by economic problems. Spain has a Mediterranean climate with hot summers and mild winters. If you want to visit Spain, there are many interesting places to explore. Thanks for watching. See you next time.